Is China's social credit system real? I mean, does it really actually exist? There's no way in hell a system so authoritarian and so something out of sci-fi can really be an actual thing in practice, right? I'm gonna dig down deep and figure out what the social credit system was all about, and also I interviewed a bunch of Chinese people about their experience with the social credit system as well. But first, a word from our sponsor, NordVPN. When I lived in China for 10 years, using a VPN was incredibly important because without one, I couldn't access anything online because of the Great Firewall of China and its censorship. But even after I moved back to the US, I found that I needed to use a VPN for my everyday internet purposes. And I get that I'm a person that has to deal with threats like the Chinese government, but even if I wasn't, I'd still use a VPN, and I'll tell you why. A VPN is an amazing tool. What it does is it encrypts all of your information so that your internet provider can't see what you're doing, other people can't see what you're doing, which means your identity is safe, your credit cards are safe, and everything that you do online is anonymous. I choose NordVPN because it's super easy to use. It's really slick, it's easy to hop around to different servers and experience different types of content from around the world, and just having that peace of mind knowing that everything I do is safe. Go to nordvpn.com/Laowinner. You're gonna get a massive, huge discount off of a 2-year plan. And not only that, you're gonna get 4 free additional months. I mean, you've heard it a million times. China's social credit system. I've previously spoken about how China's social credit system and how drama queens will liken it to that episode of Black Mirror. You know, losing or gaining points, like on an app that everyone can see, and how that leads to a glorified popularity contest which segregates people based on their score. It's kind of not like that, and it kind of is at the same time. Or how on the flip side, the Chinese government apologists, you know, the tankies that love the CCP, rush to the scene to say that the social credit system is either good and creates model citizens, or they lie and say that it doesn't exist at all. This is also untrue. The truth about China's social credit system is that it can be both a bit boring and actually super messed up. And to be honest, that's a great analogy for how the Chinese government operates anyway. It's a horribly boring fascist regime that relies on big tech and surveillance to keep its citizens in check and under their thumb. The truth of the matter is that China wants a full-on social credit system that rates its citizens and rewards those who are loyal to the party, and then punishes those who behave badly. This fantasy started in a city called Rongcheng in Shandong, and it's actually a city I spent some time in while I was filming with my friend for Conquering Northern China, a documentary that we made. And I actually found the government documents, they are public, that outline exactly how the social credit system works. I'm talking about a huge multi-page document that tells you what gives you points in the social credit system and what takes them away. It's very easy once you've translated it to understand how it works. If you report illegal conduct, such as people participating in feudal superstition, so Chinese religions and things like that, unlawful construction, environmental pollution, or participation in cult organizations, that's a +10. So basically, if you're a rat, you get +10. And let me tell you, it's not necessarily based on behavior, as it is more of a system to make sure that you fall in line with the Communist Party of China. Citizens are given a total of 1,000 base points, and different things can reduce or cause a citizen to gain points or lose them. Last year, after I translated the Chinese government documents to see how it was going to be implemented, I wanted to actually see nowadays in 2021 how it's being put into action. I call it a fantasy because it simply hasn't been rolled out across the entire country yet. I think a lot of people get this wrong. They think the entire country of China currently is using the social credit system. That is absolutely something that the government wants done, but it has not been achieved yet. I mean, the John Cena memes are hilarious, I get it.
大家好，中国，现在我有冰淇淋，我很喜欢冰淇淋。
Don't you feel silly? Don't you feel stupid?
但是《速度与激情9》比冰淇淋《速度与激情》9我最喜欢。
Gentlemen.
And they show that the general public in other countries is starting to understand kind of the insanity that actually is the Chinese social credit system. But just like China's building quality and fake poverty alleviation initiatives, the social credit system simply isn't found in most parts of the country yet. But that is not to say that the Chinese government isn't absolutely trying their damnedest to make it happen. So what better way to figure this out than to ask Chinese people that are living under the current system? I reached out to about a dozen Chinese people in different parts of the country, and I got mixed results when I asked them about it. A friend I know in Chengdu City told me that he had heard of the social credit system, but didn't know of anyone that had to use it. A friend of mine near Hangzhou in eastern China said that there was a point-based system that punished people who didn't sort their trash and recycling properly, but told me that after a few months, it stopped being enforced. He also joked that it was laughed at by a lot of the locals because the garbage isn't even sorted after it's picked up and it's all thrown in the same place. That is very, very CCP. A person who used to live in Suzhou said the local government had experimented with taking away points for people who didn't show up for dinner reservations. Other people that I had spoken to said that they had heard things on the internet about the social credit system, but hadn't heard too much otherwise. However, it is real and pretty scary in the places that it has been properly implemented. Think of it as a test bed for the rest of the country. A person told me that his father wasn't allowed to book a high-speed rail ticket due to a false allegation of something that his father did. Although, I gotta be fair, he wouldn't tell me what that allegation was. It does corroborate the statistics though. In areas where the system is in full implementation, more than 27 million airplane tickets, as well as 6 million high-speed rail tickets have been denied because of low social credit scores, meaning that these people could not book a plane ticket or a train ticket because they had done something the government found unsavory. Not something that threw them in jail or was considered a crime, but something that was socially unacceptable to the Chinese government. Some people with high scores have had reduced waiting times in hospitals. The positives are outlined in the documents. That's the only one I've seen in practice. Schools and universities that have heeded the central government or have been documented denying schooling to untrustworthy residents, meaning their children are not allowed to attend schools. It's mostly had to do with private schools and universities, not so much public schools. Perhaps the worst thing that's been documented is having untrustworthy citizens, and those are the people that are below a certain threshold, and their personal information and crimes broadcast across digital bulletin boards. I get that a lot of the audience will say, oh, China's so based. I hate when people run red lights or tailgate, etc. But this is so much more than that. We're talking about punishing people not just for traffic violations, but we're talking about punishing people that went to complain about poisoned groundwater to the central government. Because yes, even though that you're constitutionally allowed to petition the government in China, the social credit system punishes you and takes away points if you do so. Think about the irony there. You can go petition the government and say that something is wrong, but you are punished with a social credit system if you do that. Can you understand what the Chinese government's trying to get at here? It's trying to localize and hinder the movement of citizens that they consider unsavory. You see, this is a real thing that dictators do. I lived in China for 10 years during its golden years of opening up, and I watched Xi Jinping, the current dictator of China, slowly go down the route of North Korea, albeit with more money. People always say that it's kind of preposterous to call China North Korea, but it really isn't. It's just a more developed North Korea. In fact, it can be even more authoritarian in some ways because of the access to big data and the amount of surveillance that China actually has. China constantly pumps out propaganda of its successes and perceived advantages over Western democracies that are all in decline, according to Chinese state media, all while shielding and blocking its own citizens behind a great wall of censorship. And you know what that does? It blocks any and all information from the outside world, save for curated negativity that shows the downfalls of countries like the USA. China would have you believe, at least with its paid internet trolls, that they are participating or allowing their citizens to participate in international dialogue, when in fact they only allow people to go out there when it's a criticism of the West or a promotion of the Chinese government. It's an ironic hypocrisy that I don't think a lot of people understand, especially here in the US. China is so insecure in its ruling system that it cannot allow its own people to compete fairly in a globalized world of free-flowing information. It blames the West, or the US in particular, for constantly antagonizing China, when in fact the majority of the world is simply criticizing its abhorrent human rights record and cultural genocide of its minorities. All the while, the Chinese government keeps saying that the US and other Western countries want nothing but death and destruction for China and its people. I don't know about you, but I feel like the majority of people out there want nothing but the best for Chinese people and want them to be able to participate fairly on the world stage, not be censored by a nanny state that force feeds them propaganda all day. This is what weak and hypocritical dictatorships do. They create a boogeyman out of other countries. North Korea did it with Japan and the USA, and China does the same thing. You have to scare the hell out of your own citizens with fake threats of aggression from the outside world in order to allow them to accept full control over their lives. That's what the social credit system is. It's full control over someone's past, present, and future. And it's easier when they have an outside enemy, or a perceived one at that, to get them to relinquish the rights that they do have, while getting them to ignore simultaneously the massive problems domestically in China, like power shortages or economic downturn or housing bubbles and so much more. It's a double benefit as well, because China gets to cherry pick and manufacture all information that it feeds to its populace. And at the same time, it gets to block them from any negative information about corruption or human rights violations or pollution or cancer rates or really anything. And at the same time, they get to cherry pick and manufacture their own image that they want to give to the outside world. Think about all the pro-CCP content that you might see on YouTube or on other platforms that only show the very, very best parts of China that the government has curated. Why do you think so many of those people work with Chinese state media? Because they're only allowed to show the certain things that the Chinese government wants you to see. What China does is effectively block the world from seeing anything but perfection about how the Chinese government operates, and limits its citizens from experiencing reality. A good analogy is the Chinese government, kind of how it operates under Xi Jinping, is truly a self-curated virtual reality experience. You can imagine putting on VR goggles that shows you a paradise, a mansion that you could never afford, a bevy of jet skis and supercars, a beautiful companion that is actually 3D rendered. The Chinese government does the same thing with their own surroundings by limiting what their people can see and talk about, how much control they have over their own lives, and also what they want the rest of the world to see. Under Xi Jinping, China is truly a virtual reality experience that's created for itself. And it's not the cool kind of virtual reality. It's really the stuff of nightmares.